Kaori parked her rental car at the foot of the hill, just as the sun's dying light painted the sky in bruised shades of crimson. She paused at the wrought iron gate, its spikes mottled with rust, and felt the first prickle of unease crawl up her spine. The wind whispered through the wisteria vines, carrying a melody so faint it could have been her imagination. Her heart hammered as she clutched her camera bag closer, bracing herself for the investigation that had drawn her halfway across the country. The path up the hill was cloaked in a thick layer of fog that seemed to press against her lungs, making each breath a deliberate effort. The air smelled of damp wood and decay, as though the earth itself mourned centuries of neglect. With each step, the distant valley below receded into swirling grey, and the silhouette of the veranda grew larger, more imposing. When she reached the top, the porch stretched out before her like a waiting moor, its floorboards groaning under invisible weight. Kaori set up her equipment in a deliberate ritual born of habit. Tripod, camera, EVP recorder, each piece clicking into place with mechanical precision. As she tested the angle of her infrared camcorder, a sudden snap sounded behind her, like the breaking of old twig. She spun around, heart in her throat, but the fog swallowed any hint of movement. Only the wisteria vines stirred, their pale blossoms dancing in an unseen breeze. She forced herself to steady her breathing, whispering into the recorder. Testing 1, 2. When night fell in earnest, the estate transformed. The once gentle breeze hardened into a chilling gust, rattling the shutters and sending loose leaves skittering across the veranda. Kaori flicked on her lamps, their beams cutting jagged arcs through the fog. She pressed record and settled into the rocking chair, its metal springs protesting under her weight. The sensation was uncanny. She felt as if unseen eyes traced the curve of her neck, watched the rhythm of her pulse. Minutes later, the camera's red light blinked in the gloom, and the EVP recorder's static hissed like a wounded creature. Then came the scratching, soft, deliberate, pulling across the floorboards as if something or someone was inching closer. Kaori's breath hitched. She leaned forward, whispering into the recorder, "Who's there?" The scratching stopped. Silence reigned for a heartbeat. Then a voice, thin and strained, breathed her name. Kaori. Her skin prickled as the word drifted through the speakers. By torchlight, she crept along the veranda, inspecting each board for the origin of that whisper. Her flashlight caught shapes, in the dust tiny footprints, child-sized, leading from the rocking chair toward the eastern railing. The prints ended abruptly at a knot in the wood, as if the child had vanished into the grain itself. A chill settled into Kaori's bones. Near the railing she noticed delicate scratches carved into the wood, 5 letters that spelled stay. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she traced the lines with trembling fingertips. Kaori retreated indoors, shutting the heavy door and pressing her back against its splintered surface. The smell of damp earth and rotting wood was suffocating inside the hallway, and the floorboards bowed under the weight of unseen presences. She switched on her handheld recorder, hoping to catch anything before fatigue overtook her. Instead, she heard a soft melody, like a lullaby, hummed in some forgotten tongue. It swelled around her, echoing through the rooms, until Kaori felt each note vibrate in her bones. Determined to press on, she ventured back onto the veranda at midnight, drawn by an irresistible compulsion. The fog had thickened into a living blanket, warm against her skin, but suffocating in its embrace. Somewhere beyond the railing, She thought she heard children laughing, distant and hollow. She peered over the edge into a sea of grey, but saw nothing. When she straightened again, the rocking chair had begun to sway gently, though no wind stirred and her breath had stilled. Fear clawed at her throat as she filmed the chair, its slow rocking eerily rhythmic in the gloom. A shadow detached itself from the mist, too tall, too lanky to be a child, yet barely human in shape. It hovered just beyond the railing, its head tilted as though curious. Kari's fingers trembled on the camera, but she held her ground. The silhouette raised a bony hand, beckoning. Each tap of that gesture was a summons she could not refuse, even as every instinct screamed to flee. She whispered into the darkness, voice quavering. "What do you want?" No answer came, but the porch lights dimmed, plunging her into a wavering dance of light and shadow. The EVP recorder crackled to life, layering static over the soft creak of boards. Kaori reviewed the recording moments later, hearing a childlike whimper buried beneath the hiss. Her heart sank as the word sorry formed in broken fragments. She pressed replay again and again, convinced the message meant something crucial. In the flicker of her torch, she noticed movement across the broken glass of the French doors. Pale faces pressed against the panes, dozens of them featureless, but for hollow eyes that burned with longing. Kaori froze, breath caught in her throat, as the children's lips formed silent pleas. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to dread, mouths pulling into mournful shapes that spoke of centuries trapped in this limbo. Compassion warred, with terror inside her as she realized she was the intruder in their prison. She stumbled backward, nearly toppling the camera, and slammed the doors shut behind her. The house groaned in response, as though mourning her interruption. The hallway before her stretched into impenetrable darkness, the only illumination coming from the weak glow of her flashlight. She paused at the threshold of the parlor, wondering if she should retreat to the car and abandon the investigation, but a whisper slipped from her lips. "I have to help you." Tentatively, Kaori descended the creaking staircase into the heart of the house. Each step felt laden with centuries of sorrow. The wallpaper peeled in long curling strips, revealing walls stained by time itself. Her torchlight caught glimpses of old portraits whose subjects gazed at her with blurry eyes. Somewhere in the shadows, the lullaby continued, more insistent now, coaxing her deeper into the darkness. She pressed onward, despite the tremor in her limbs. At the bottom of the stairs, she found a narrow corridor lined with closed doors. A cold draft seeped from beneath each threshold, carrying the faintest echo of laughter and tears. The whispering song guided her to the far end, where a single door stood ajar. Beyond it lay a nursery frozen in time. A rocking cradle, a toppled rag doll, and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. Kaori felt the air grow thick, as though the room itself breathed alongside her. The recorders in her pack crackled with static, and when she switched one on, a voice, tiny and desperate, cried out, "Help us!" Kaori's breath hitched. She swept her flashlight across the room, illuminating old toys and a battered writing desk beneath a dusty window. On the chair beside it, an open journal lay splayed among scattered pages. Hesitantly, she flipped through the brittle leaves. The entries, dated centuries ago, chronicled a woman's descent into madness as her children vanished one by one. The final entry was smudged and barely legible, yet its message was clear. "They wait on the porch. They call to me. I cannot stay away." As Kari read those words, the nursery door slammed shut behind her with such force that she nearly dropped the journal. Panic flared in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Positioning her camera at the doorway, she began filming as she worked the latch. The door creaked open again, revealing only the corridor's blank emptiness. She returned to the veranda, clutching the journal as if it were a lifeline. The fog had receded slightly, revealing more of the valley below. But the children's silhouettes lingered at the edge of her vision. They flitted in and out of view, silent and pleading. Kaori felt an ache of sorrow wash over her. These souls had been trapped here too long, bound to a place of sorrow and neglect. She knew that to help them, she would have to confront whatever presence had ensnared them. The silhouette materialized once more, this time closer to her, its hand pressing against the balustrade. Kaori lifted the journal and spoke into the gloom. "I have your mother's words. I know her fate." The shape hesitated, and the whispering lullaby slowed to a stilled hum. In the wavering glow of her lantern, she saw tears, something like tears sliding down the figure's featureless face. It swayed in sorrowful attention, waiting for her next move. Clutching the journal to her heart, Kahori began to read the mother's final plea aloud. "Forgive me, my darlings. I could not keep you safe." Her voice quavered, but each word seemed to ripple through the night air. The children's silhouettes pressed closer, their tiny hands beckoning. As the last syllable left her lips, a chorus of whispers filled the veranda. "Free us." Their voices layered over the scratch of boards and the soft moan of wind through the wisteria. A thunderous crack split the air as the railing beneath the rocking chair splintered. Kaori stumbled back, heart pounding, as the chair toppled over the edge of the porch and vanished into the mist. In the darkness beyond, she thought she heard a rush of tiny footsteps, running free at last. Then the fog billowed inward, engulfing the porch in a suffocating embrace. Kaori's lantern flickered and died, plunging her into a silence so complete it rang in her ears. Breathless, she sank to her knees, hands pressed against the cold floorboards. The wind ceased, and the silence stretched until even her own pulse seemed loud. Then, from somewhere deep within the house, came a soft, sorrowful sigh. Kaori rose on shaking legs, guided only by the faint glow of her fading camera. She pressed the record button and whispered, "Whatever binds you, it's over." Her words dissolved into the hush. Light returned in muted waves as dawn threatened beyond the fog. Kaori felt the mist recede, unveiling the valley below bathed in a silver glow. She watched in awe as dozens of tiny footprints, no longer dusty but shimmering with morning dew, traced across the veranda and disappeared over the edge. The rocking chair lay broken at the bottom of the hill, its wood splintered but somehow peaceful. In that moment, Kaori knew the children had found release. Gathering her equipment, she stepped back into the house's hushed embrace. Sunlight filtered through cracked windows, painting the peeling wallpaper in warm tones. The nursery door remained closed, its latch unbroken. Kaori approached and dared to push it open. Inside, the cradle was overturned and the journal lay on the floor, its final page now blank. No whisper, no lullaby. Only the steady rhythm of her own breath filled the room. She carried the journal outside, where the mist had retreated entirely. The colonial house sat in quiet triumph against the waking sky, its veranda empty and still. Kaori placed the journal on the porch rail, the pages fluttering in the soft morning breeze. A final whisper curled through the air, almost lost. "Thank you." It was so delicate she might have imagined it, but the tears in her eyes told her otherwise. As she descended the hill, the sun broke free of the horizon, casting long shadows behind her. The house receded into mist once more, its presence shifting until only the wisteria vines remained, tangled and silent. Kaori paused at the gate, looking back at the hilltop. No figure stood upon the porch. No trace of the children's silhouettes lingered. Only the distant hum of morning insects and the rustle of ivy greeted her departure. Back in her car, Kaori reviewed the night's footage on her camera's screen. The images flickered between clarity and static, revealing the chair's lonely sway, the tall silhouettes beckoning, and the pale faces pressed to the glass. Then, at the very end, a final frame. Empty rocking chairs swaying in the dark. She froze the image, her breath catching as the chairs moved against physics. As though propelled by unseen hands, she let the camera rest on her lap and closed her eyes. The valley below stretched into a new day, golden and serene. Yet Kaori felt the weight of what she'd witnessed settle in her chest. These children, lost to time, had found their way out of a realm of shadow and had chosen her to guide them. A tremor of grief passed through her as she realized how fragile the boundary between worlds could be. In the days that followed, Kaori's footage became the centerpiece of her next documentary, its haunting imagery sending ripples through the paranormal community. Colleagues praised her bravery, but she remained reticent, haunted by the memory of those hollow eyes. Each playback of the recordings brought a fresh wave of sorrow, mingled with relief that she had freed so many from their prison. The old house on the hill returned to legend, its silhouette unseen now behind the veil of time. Locals whispered of vanished children and a lone investigator who had braved the mist. Kaori avoided the stories, afraid that speaking of them would call the shadows back. Yet at dusk, she found herself gazing toward that mist-cloaked hill, as though hearing the faintest echo of a lullaby carried on the wind. One evening, months later, Kaori sat on her own porch, the twilight sky blooming in deep purples and greys. A cold breeze whispered through the trees, and she shivered despite the warmth of her coat. From the edge of the tree line, she thought she saw movement, a fleeting silhouette that beckoned with a lanky hand. Her heartbeat skipped, but she did not rise to investigate. Instead, she retrieved her camera and pressed record. Her fingers steady, the air around her crackled with static. And for a moment, she believed she'd been drawn back into that world of shadows. But the shape vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving nothing but the silent sway of her porch swing. Kaori exhaled, realizing she carried that frontier of the unknown within her now, tethered by memory and compassion. Late that night, she reviewed the footage. The screen flickered as usual, but no whisper emerged from the speaker, only her own voice, steady and sure. Yet, as she fast-forwarded frame by frame, a single image froze her bloodless blood. The silhouette of a child, standing at the edge of her frame. Hand extended as if to thank her. Then it melted away, leaving only static. Kaori blinked against the glow of the monitor and leaned back in her chair. The room was dark except for the screen's pale light, and she felt the same mix of dread and sorrow she had on that veranda months ago. In her hand, the journal lay open on her desk, its pages still blank from where she had left them. She traced a finger over the empty paper, wondering if the children's story would ever be truly finished. Weeks passed, and the incident on the hill became a distant echo in Kaori's mind, overshadowed by newer investigations and urban legends. Yet sometimes at dawn, Her dreams were haunted by the creak of floorboards and the soft scrape of tiny footsteps. She'd wake with her heart racing, certain she heard a lullaby carried on the breeze, only to find her room still and silent. On the anniversary of that night, Kaori returned once more to the summit of the hill, not to the house itself, but to the base of the path. She stood in the morning light, camera slung over her shoulder, and listened to the valley below. The breeze stirred the grass, and she imagined the children playing somewhere beyond the fog, free at last. Before walking away, she placed the journal at the foot of the hill, its blank pages waiting for new stories to be written. A single wisteria blossom floated down, landing on the cover as if in benediction. Kaori watched it for a long moment, then turned toward the winding road that would lead her back to civilization and the comforts of her home. As she drove away, the hill receded into the distance, shrouded once again in mist. Kaori felt a mixture of relief and longing swell inside her chest. The shadows of the porch would remain a part of her, their whispers etched into her soul. She understood now that some journeys never truly end. They live on in memory and in the echoes of voices carried on the wind. Back in the city, Kaori displayed a single frame from her footage on her studio wall. The empty rocking chair swaying in darkness. She stared at it each evening before turning in, the image reminding her that unseen worlds existed just beyond sight. And though she told herself she was done with that house, she knew it would always call to her, its whispers at dusk lingering in the corners of her mind. Months later, during a live interview about her work, Kaori felt a chill sweep through the studio. The lights flickered, and for an instant the camera lens captured something in the background, a small pale face pressed against a window. She blinked, heart pounding. But when she turned, nothing remained. The audience applauded her response to a question she barely heard, unaware of the shadow that had appeared and vanished in the corner of her eye. Alone that night, Kaori sat before her camera, recording a personal message to anyone who might stumble upon her footage. Her voice was soft but resolute as she warned, "Some doors, once opened, never fully close. Be mindful of the whispers that reach you on a wind you cannot see." She paused, glancing into the lens, as though expecting an answer. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the faintest creak, like a rocking chair stirring in the dark, and the whisper of a single word, "Stay."